As Guyana sits on the economic and political crossroads, we speak to the nation's opinion leaders and decision makers to get their views on the challenges the country faces and the path it must take to achieve national development. Welcome to Nation Watch. Now here is your host Mervyn Williams, former member of the Guyana Parliament.
2024, and Nation Watch comes to you today from the Rupununi. You can hear the tolling of the bell of the church, a call to worship. We are in Coradinao, in the South Rupununi. With me is the leader of the opposition, leader of the People's National Congress Reform, Mr. Aubrey Thompson, who is on outreach in the Rupununi, one which is overdue, but nonetheless is here. Welcome to the Nation Watch, and may I welcome to the Rupununi.
Well, I'm wondering if you should be welcome in the future, but I've been welcome a few times. Thanks for having me, and good morning to your listening and viewing viewers.
Well, viewers, behind us, it's not a virtual background. This is the real Guyana. This is the territory of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Undisputed, indisputable territory of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. This is the scenery from Coradinao in Region 9. Mr. Norton, you have so far interacted with residents from a number of villages in the Rupununi, and you are going on to meet with others today and perhaps tomorrow. You've so far met with people from Parashara, Iowa, Napi, Ipukari, Kalkule, Leonau, Hawayanau, Shia, actually Aishalton right here, Coradinao. How do you feel about the reception of the people in the villages?
Well, I feel extremely good. I believe there's a certain awakening of consciousness here. I feel good about the visit. But what I don't feel good about is the news I'm getting. If you sit in the parliament and listen to the ministers, you will believe that, oh, these villages, we have given them solar panels and they're doing well. Well, in this village here, the big complaint is that the solar panels that they have could barely give them light. In fact, they said its most effective thing is to charge in a phone. And so we're hearing about the millions they are expending on solar energy, but all the villages you visit, that is the major complaint, that there is inadequate electricity, and what is being done really isn't solving the problem. The other complaint that is very much all around is about the education system. They have complained about the architecture of the schools, that these schools are extremely hot and they're not conducive to learning. Everywhere we went, there was that complaint. And then teachers are also complaining that you have them teaching, you want them to do college at the same time, and it's a real burden on them. So there has been that complaint. But the one that is most appalling is that after you had what happened in Madian with the dorm students, you are getting serious complaints about the dorms here. For instance, only last evening, it was pointed out that every day children are going to the hospital from Aishalton dormitory because of the sanitary conditions. And so a lot of the talk about billions into education is really garbage, because people are not feeling the impact of this investment. And so, well, we know a good bit of it goes to corruption, but we thought at minimum they would be able to provide the dorms with resources they need, so at least those children can be in a safe and comfortable environment. And that is one of the major concerns. And this concern is amplified by the fact that a lot of the students have to leave neighboring villages and go to the dorm. And many people are saying they have to put their children in alternative accommodation because the dorms are badly kept. That has resulted in a call for secondary school, a secondary school close to those persons so that they can have their education and at the same time go home. I also believe that at least the problems of some of them can be solved by the government purchasing 2 minibuses and given to them, because you have 27 children in the surrounding area, going to the secondary school at Aishalton, and if buses are provided, then those children could go to school and then go back home. So there are a lot of concerns about the education system and the pressure on teachers here to teach in a very uncomfortable environment. Even the students, as you will see in some of the videos we will show, are complaining.
It is rather refreshing, though, in all the negative circumstances and all the negative reports. It is certainly refreshing that the persons getting up to articulate the position to represent the issues are in large measure young people. And that holds some promise for the future of Region 9, in particular in the South of Colonia.
It does say to me that young people are looking at the reality. They are not caught up with who the parents voted for. They are looking at the reality. And what I find interesting is that they compare 2015 to 2020. They compare 2015 to 2020 with the period before. And a lot of them are arguing that they did obtain better services, etc., while we are in government. Unlike the PPP saying that we did nothing, in this area, people are saying to you, look, about 40 wells were done while we were in government, and they are not continuing the process. People are pointing out that a reservoir or two were made so that water could be saved for times like now when it is the dry season, because as you move around, all the creeks are dried up, etc. And this government has shown the act reflects the will of the people. And I think people here are prepared that there's this possibility that they can run and come and say they're doing it. But they are already aware of the fact that they had 3 years, they're into their 4th year, and they haven't done it. And so I think people are prepared for the political facade that they are likely to come with.
The American Act was misrepresented by Barrett Jackio in an interview with Vice. No, this act was promulgated while he was president. And he told Vice News that that act gave the indigenous people which is an absolute lie. In many villages across the country, you will find that the indigenous people are clamoring for more some sort of human right. I would love to listen to what people think will be beneficial to them and to say to them what is beneficial to the entire nation, and to get balance and agreement. But why is there a misrepresentation?
Well, I don't like the word misrepresent. The man is a pathological liar. And so it is normal for him to lie. And all he did is to be Barajak Deo. Barajak Deo told the world that he was responsible for the establishment of Amelia's Ward in Linden when he was about 6 years of age when actually come. So intrinsic and interwoven into the fabric of Barajak is this tendency to lie. So I'm not surprised. And then he might have reasoned that, oh, the indigenous people might not see it, and therefore you will get away with it. Unfortunately, the world has changed, which is one of the things Barry Jagdeo failed to recognize. The world is no longer a place where you can be isolated in a village and information isn't there. By the time you smile, it is on social media. And the faster Barry Jagdeo comes to grip with the fact that a liar will always be exposed, his heels will be the better. I do not believe you can get Barry Jagdeo to talk the truth for two reasons. One, he's a pathological liar. And the second one, he bluffs at the level of intellectualism. He's not somebody who has intellectual capacity that can be involved in a debate. And that is why he has this tendency to talk to himself and to choose journalists that are friendly rather than allow. And when he met with the Vice News journalist, for the first time, Mr. felt, well, look, I'm not in control. And so he belched the lie. But that is vintage Barry Jagdeo.
It's not the one to take you to the commencement of the journey. You came back and you have pressures to get the work started and that's stressful. Speak to us, please, on the road from Georgetown to London.
Like I've said, since Burnham time, he didn't have the resources. But Burnham has always advocated for a road to London and had hoped in his lifetime that he would have gotten that. But he didn't have the resources. We didn't have the resources when we were in government. But we negotiated the loans to ensure that those projects can come off, both the road and the bridges. When the government came to power, they attempted to block them. They started with the Mackenzie to Wismar Bridge. And when they started with that, what in essence happened is that they went out publicly to say, that the bridge was not going to be done. The road wasn't going to be done. It is pressure from the opposition and the international community that caused them to go ahead with it. So when I saw the project, I felt good because in my opinion, it's an APN project and the government is fortunate to have the resources from oil and gas to implement it. So I'm happy that it is being done. But in the nature of Barry Jagdeo, they ran into Linden to talk as if it was their project. When I had to remind them at Tongue Week opening, the first Tongue Week opening as leader of this party, I called on the government to ensure those projects come off and do not destroy them. The PPP has a history of doing these things to Linden. When we left government in 1992, there was a loan to rebuild the Soesdijk Linden Highway. And the government took the money and put it in other areas. I always remember Samine stupidly saying that the road don't need any, you don't need a new. So the road has deteriorated, and is what it is. But what is worse about what is happening now is that you're bringing these roads into two-lane highway, but you're only doing back a one lane on the highway. And I said if they were using their brains and looking into the future, they would have allowed this present highway to stay. Build a new one parallel. When you complete that, you keep it as two-lane, then you redo the existing one, and you will end up with a four-lane highway, which is what is needed. But this is not a government of foresight. This is a government that sees projects as an opportunity to get corruption money. And once the project isn't teamed with potential for the corruption money, they would tend to sabotage it. And more so, look, most of the villages we've gone to here, in which the APNU beat the PPP. They do the same thing they do to Linden, starve them of resources. That was one of the complaints we had throughout. Of villages that are perceived to be APNU stronghold, they are deprived of the resources to develop. Obviously, that as you build, you will destroy. But as you destroy, you should be expected to fully backgrade it so that you don't, in the process of building, inconvenience people extremely. It is well established that there will be inconvenience. We're not saying no to inconvenience. We're saying act in a way that you could relieve some of the hardship and ensure that people can travel while you do your work. And that is what is access. This commitment to the people of Region 9 to will give them services, but at the same time attenuate, reduce the hardship on them caused by these big trucks. But the government is flawed in many regards as it relates to that. You only have to look at when they were doing the road on the East Bank. They didn't put any provision in place, so a lot of the big trucks were going through Diamond, etc., and just breaking up the roads. There is need for more thinking on how this should be done.
Information works. We're coming to you from Ghana in South Carolina. We invite all our.
And I said this, and when you see some of the scenes, you will think we could film cowboy pictures here.
I'm sure. In fact, sometimes I look at them and believe I'm in the room. Let's talk a little bit about the roads from the main trail, the main road to the villages. You have been on the road here for a couple of days. The oil money is building little alleyways in PPP support areas on the coast where there's not even room for a road. Concrete footpaths are being constructed. We know that 41 cents from every dollar goes down into corruption. So the road is started and it seems it never will be completed. Money is being poured all across the support areas, particularly in roads, and absolutely nothing is being done for the roads accessing the villages in the community. Listen, what does this mean to you? For me as an indigenous person, that person that says that the government of Guyana only looks to the indigenous peoples for votes and cares absolutely nothing about our welfare and our well-being.
We have to go back. The PPP was in government for 23 years. And they left Lethem as backward as ever. We came into government in 2015 and we began the process of asphalted roads in Lethem. So if you arrive in Lethem after 2015, you see a totally different thing. I think the fact that we did that, and they like to say we did nothing, they're trying to do some things around Lethem to be able to say that they're doing well, but it is nothing in comparison to what we did in government. I do not think the PPP is committed to the development of people. They are committed to ensure the elite, their family, friends, and favorites make money. And because that is the case, they will have grave difficulties developing plans in a balanced way to ensure all communities benefit. And there is some balance between what you do in terms of the main roads, highways, etc., and giving access, giving help to villages that need proper access. I don't think there is that balance. I don't think that we have said, as part of our people-centered vision for the development of Guyana, we will treat the hinterland in a way that ensures we reduce the gap between the hinterland and the coast. People would come to the Rupununi and to the interior if there is the infrastructure for them to be made common. And our intention is to narrow that gap. You can't do all at one time, but you could strategically develop a strategic plan and in a structured way deal with the problems in this part of the world and ensure that people benefit in a significant way.
In researching Burnham, you recognize that Burnham's vision is to look at land, not and the people. That last night here in Colorado. Could you expand a little bit because we're not about people and we'd be interested.
Burnham had a policy called hinterland development, in which a structured approach was being taken to the development of the hinterland. Like I said at the time, we didn't have the resources, but certain things were done. The hinterland scholarships that he developed allow a lot of young people with ability to access education and improve themselves. And so he started the process by just what we are saying now, focusing on human resource development. You have a situation in which all the contractors, or 99% of the contractors who do work in Region 9, come from the coast. Now, I'm not saying that people from the coast mustn't get scholarships, but part of our people-centered development strategy would be to train people so you have the skills needed to develop the region. And so we will focus on ensuring those young people get the skills. We've also said that we will train people to become contractors. It's unfair to have a community, you build in a guest house, and somebody from the center is sent to build that guest house. And the people there, yes, they will benefit from the guest house, but they will benefit far more if they are empowered to be able to build that guest house and allow money to circulate in the villages. And that is the approach we intend to take. One in which we train people, we empower them, so that the basic contract can be given to people in the villages. They do it, and that will also help them to improve quality, because the persons in the village will be able to say, this is what you do. Now what you have is a contractor to come do virtually anything, and people are not going to see them again. And so they have to live with it. I do believe that, and as part of our strategy, we are going to improve the quality of life of people in the hinterland by training them in financial literacy and small business development, by providing them with grants and soft loans to ensure that they can develop. I met a young lady who is planting watermelons, and sometimes it is difficult because they don't have the skills. And we have said in our people-centered vision that we will train more young people from the Rupununi at the Guyana School of Agriculture. Some of them will move on to university, some of them come back home and help with the development in agriculture. I have argued in every budget since I'm leader of the opposition that you have to promote agriculture in the hinterland. When you listen to the Minister Zulfikar talking, and then you come here to go and see the level of rice production, you're not seeing the rice production. All the rice production is a bumper crop in Chronicle. We have to promote agriculture and let it impact the people. It is ridiculous for you to be talking about this big agricultural program in the hinterland, and there is none really. There is need for a proper agricultural program, and we will put that in.
I want to touch this that could be a little bit controversial as it comes to agriculture. Pauline Sukai, Minister of Agrarian Affairs, brags about the number of tractors and trailers and plows that have been given to indigenous villages and talks about boosting the agricultural potential and the agricultural output of these villages. When there is no training for young people in the villages. Two, there is no extension services coming from the Ministry of Agriculture. Three, there is actually no plan for agricultural development at the hinterland level, as you said, and particularly in indigenous villages, which rely still on subsistence farming. But worse than that, the People's Progressive Party has started this unplanned vote, I call them voter procurement operations, where they give cash grants to people, and they are encouraging indigenous peoples not to plant, that money will come. And so now, in the absence of a plan, in the face of all the equipment, in the absence of support services, in the absence of training, what you have in the Rupununi is a shortage of cassava. The people of the Rupununi do not have cassava to make farine, which is their staple meal, their staple diet. What is the People's Progressive Party really doing to the indigenous population of this country, and how do we fix it?
I think the People's Progressive Party wrongly believes that if you keep people dependent, you will control them until death. What they miss is what some call the dialectical relationship between the two. It can, on the one hand, produce dependence, but on the other hand, it can produce resistance. And I think it is producing some among the resistance. There has to be a proper agricultural plan for the area. There has to be adequate training to have extension officers, which we had years ago, to help those farmers. There has to be the provision of seeds, the helping in the preparation of the land, but most importantly, they have to have a plan to deal with the dry season like now. Because if people go into agriculture and they can't access water, then they will be in trouble. And what you see is the PPP in a very ad hoc way, just allocating money, which they know will go down the line because there's no proper plan. And then they come and they hand out some form of grant, whether it's cash or tractor. But short of a proper plan, guided by a proper vision, what will happen is just what is happening. The destruction of these communities and making them further dependent on the coast, rather than empowering them. We have said one of our objectives is to produce self-sufficient communities. And we will take all the measures to ensure that these communities are self-sufficient. There's a big cry here about pension. When I thought the crying on the coast is loud, it is much louder here because the senior citizens, they don't have any other form of income. And so they are sometimes minding themselves and family with a pension that is next to nothing. And so we have to be able to provide those services so that people, look, it boggles the mind when you travel on that trail. What happens to a pregnant woman? And one of the things people ask for here is a proper ambulance with 4x4 and the requisite shafts so that they can transport their patients, etc. In my opinion, the PPP focuses on the economy to get votes. But as fate would have it, people are now comparing 2015, 2020 to their period in government and the period now. And that comparison is resulting in people rejecting the PPP in many areas. Let us not forget that they send out people to say they must not come to these meetings. But as you see from the meetings, people are coming and they're expressing their views.
In the same train of thought, 48 wells were drilled and commissioned. In reported to the APN people because they perceive those persons not to be supportive of them.
Look, don't forget, idiocy transcended the normal. When Ejil told people in Georgetown and Lenin they could get better services if they vote for you. So it's a policy position. It's wrong, but it's a policy position. I believe it's a little of both ignorance and vindictiveness. I don't think the PPP sees maintenance as part of the operation. In fact, if you maintain them too well, the boys can get another contract. If, however, they come, they break up, it's contract for the boys. I also think there is vindictiveness. Yeah, because when you talk to people in the villages, you hear them say they kept them waiting there for panels and they wait until 7 in the night. And then they got a message which says, y'all is APNU support.
This is what I'm coming to know on the individual side. There's actual accounts of the village of one where they were distributing solar panels across the villages in the south. And they just dropped off boxes of stuff at Morano and said, look, we'll come back and we'll do the official handing over. And folks were there since 6 o'clock in the morning waiting for them to arrive at mid-morning. And they left, went to another village which they believe supports them. And the people of Morano were sitting there waiting until 10 p.m. that night. The government entourage took another trail and went about their merry business. When the CDO came through, that's when the villagers knew that the government officials were not coming. And that's when they were told that they voted for the political party. It is ridiculous the way this progressive party seeks the citizens of this country.
The positive of it for us is that people are recognizing who they are. And even in villages that voted for them, we are seeing an increase in support. In fact, I won't call the village because I know they're going to run in there before. But at least 2 villages that supported the PPP invited us. And the people who came, I told them, we will do another visit and we will visit those villages and engage people. But we are seeing a rejection of the People's Progressive Party in the room.
I believe what I was there for national development. We received reports this morning. Government employees the youth seems to carry some divine notes with it. Why would the People's Progressive Party invest money and equipment and human resources just to ensure that every not political competition does not get thrown out at the meetings that we plan?
Well, I'm least worried about the investment because the videos will show all of our meetings are well attended. And I don't think the PPP recognize that we have changed our strategy and that our strategy for mobilization is working. And so by the time I would have gotten here, a lot of work was done. And so attempting to stop us when I arrived fails to understand that in mobilization, You have to have a plan and you have to have a strategy. While I wouldn't say what the strategy is, it is evident that the strategy is succeeding because we are not only mobilizing people, but we are establishing party and liaison groups across the Rupununi. And I think that augurs well for us politically. Now, I wish the young man a speedy recovery. We heard that it is critical, and none of us want anyone to lose his or her life in such circumstance. But I think the wider problem is the government needs to utilize government officials to provide goods and services to the people of the Rupununi rather than using them to put stumbling blocks in the way of the APNU. The APNU will always analyze the situation and remove the stumbling blocks before we get to them.
I want you to speak for the next 3 or 4 minutes to your supporters. Importantly, outside of the region generally.
That I led the protests as General Secretary in 1997. And those people, many of them have not recognized that the circumstances would have changed. And therefore we have to change our approach. One of the things I did when I became leader was to begin to engage all party people, to say to them, we need to be in the fields all the time. So that when election comes, people can say, now you come. We have been under my leadership, we have been in all communities given leadership. Ghana has plenty villages. Here alone it's 200 and...
Region 9, I think it's 65 villages.
But 250 across the country. Yeah, I'd be making a mistake. 250 across the country. So you cannot go to all of them in person. But you can have people go. And then I'm seeking to change the culture in the party. Some people come to the party believing that to be an MP or to be an executive member doesn't make you an activist. In our approach, every person in this party must be an activist. Our activism must be in keeping with what oppositions do. They educate, okay? They expose and they agitate. Your forms of agitation can be different. For instance, I took an early decision that the approach to Jack Deo should not be cussing out with him, but should be exposing the weaknesses of the people, identifying alternative plans and programs. And since he lacks the intellectual capacity to do that, you shift him away from his abusing, because all he does is abuse, and now challenge him in the realm where he has to show who he is, and he's showing it. Just abuser with no ideas for Guyana. Opposition has to be militant, but it doesn't necessarily follow that opposition must necessarily take to the streets and do some of the things people suggest you do. Look, some people might not want to admit it, but the teachers' strike was an industrial strike by the trade union. But it also emanated from the fact that we were campaigning against the high cost of living. We were campaigning against poverty. And people are educated to the reality that they are not benefiting from oil. And that has served to ignite it more than anything else. So I believe we are a strong opposition using different tactics to some people, different tactics to what some people are accustomed to. You have to, in this environment, raise consciousness, educate people, engage people, and to remove the myth that the APNU AFC did nothing in 5 years, and to put out there what we would have done, which we have been doing in every budget, and our general pronouncement. So I am of the view, and when I go out there, the response of people is to say, keep doing what you are doing. Some people want us to put people on the road, and then they have the political actors head of the police, and they use them against us. We will be a sensible opposition, achieving the same objective without giving them the opportunity to do some of the nonsense that they want to do. And so I don't buy the view, but there are always those people who are financed by the PPP. The PPP wants a confrontation so that they can use it as the opportunity to get their support base back to them as they lose their support base.
Forgive me for the coffee. I've been out of the bus for long, and my return is not coming. So we wrap up now. Leader of the opposition, Aubrey Norton, has interacted with residents of Parashara, Harawa, Napi, Upakari, Kaikumbe, Morono, Oworo, Shia, Achu of Aishalton, and we're here in Cardinal, where we had a very, very successful meeting last night, where we had very good interaction with the residents after the meeting. And Mr. Norton, your welcome here was one to remember. I believe that people really embraced you, people spoke glowingly of you, and there's a high level of expectation that you will deliver, eventually taking the central government and bringing the kind of development that you envision for the people of the community and for the people of Ghana at large. Your reaction in a minute will be welcome.
My reaction is this. This is not my first visit to the Rukununi. The only significant difference is that on the last occasion, we brought the leaders from all the villages to Letem, and I only went to a few villages. But on this occasion, we decided that we will visit these villages so we get first-hand information and interact with the people as distinct from the leaders. The leaders are present, but we interact with the people. And so I believe we prepared the basis for the success. And mind you, we're moving on to more villages because we're here for a while. The PPP can know we're here until Tuesday.
Yes, and they too have planned to come following Aubrey Martin and his team. We've already received the schedule of visits from the People's Progressive Party since yesterday morning, so we know that they're following the leader.
It is normal. Whichever village I go into, I went to Little Africa, and by the time I finished, they went in, they do everything for them. I hope they do the same thing.
Well, we're here in the community, in the village of Cardinal, and it is a beautiful village, and this is the first time that Nation Watch is coming to you from the Rupununi. Remember the village, Cardinal. Remember the region. This is the Rupununi region. This is the region of Tasso and Farim. Love, peace, and happiness. A friendly environment and hospitality. Thank you very much for joining us and staying with us because of the program. Until we meet again, this is Mervyn Williams, your host of Nation Watch from Cardinal in the community.